We're top of the hour.
Yes, and we always start on time.
We do.
So, welcome everyone to Baseline Tech Talk Tuesday, Season 2, Episode 23.
Right.
And if you're joining us for the first time, I'm looking to see if I see any new names. Not quite sure. We got a good list here today. You can catch all the previous episodes on YouTube. Baseline's channel handle is Baseline Web Training. That's all one word on YouTube, Baseline Web Training. You can find all the previous Tech Talk Tuesdays and then all of the how-to videos that Dan has been producing over time. And what I do on my computer, I just bookmark it once I found the channel so that you can always go back. You can bookmark it on your phone. If you're in the field and you want to learn how to do something, that's a great way to have a resource in your pocket. The topic for today is water monitoring and water management, the similarities, the differences. And Chris and I have been talking a lot about this recently, and it's going to be awesome to chat with you guys here today because we think there is a difference between those two words and between how we think about those words today and what we thought about those words 20 years ago, because the capabilities of control systems today are different than they were in years past. And so we're here today to sort of bring this discussion back up to the forefront and talk about water monitoring versus water management. And you've got us here today. We've got Dan Conger, manager, myself, Andy Humphrey, irrigation technology consultant, and Chris Wright, VP of sales. And Chris is going to lead the discussion for us. So Chris, why don't you take it from here?
All right. I think you teed it up pretty well, Andy. I think that there is a distinct difference between monitor and manage, and they're really not interchangeable references when we're talking about, monitoring or managing the amount of water that's being applied to a landscape. So we kind of wanted, deep dive into it a little bit. Obviously, get any feedback from you guys that are listening. If you have any comments or questions, please do not hesitate to put them into the chat or the Q&A, and we'll make it as interactive as possible.
Yeah, so and real quick, as you're getting your slide ready, we know that we've got contractors that join us. We have consultants that join us, distributors that join us, and maybe think about the things that we talk about today as questions you might ask your client. If you're a contractor and you're working on a retrofit, some of the things we talk about could be important topics to discuss with your client to decide how you can meet their goals and develop a system that performs for them when considering monitoring versus management.
Absolutely, because we're always looking to provide an engineered solution based on desired outcomes, right?
Yep.
That ultimately leads to customer success and happiness. All right, so we're going to start the conversation today by just reiterating the fact for those that may not have been with us last week or have not heard the news since June 1, Baseline has received EPA WaterSense labeling for soil moisture sensor technology, and that we are the first manufacturer to be labeled for both weather-based watering and soil moisture sensor-based watering with the Base Station 1000 and the Base Station 3200 platforms. So we just want to keep that top of mind and spread the word that we've got that. And I'm committed to making WaterSense program cool again now that we've got the labeling on the soil moisture sensor technology, which we have waited forever to obtain.
Yeah, right. And the great thing about a sensor is it's real data. So if you're wondering, if you're using weather-based or you're using ET and you're wondering, should it have rained yesterday? How long should it have run? What is the moisture in my soil right now? The solution.
Absolutely. Yep. It's valuable data. So in addition to that, I also want to, if I could get my slide to advance, emphasize or bring up that July 1 starts Smart Irrigation Month for the Irrigation Association. And HydroPoint is the official sponsor of Smart Irrigation Month for the IA. And we are focusing the message on smart irrigation and sustainable solutions. So on July 6th, just as a public service announcement, They are planning a special day where members of the IA or those that participate in IA initiatives wear blue and then take a selfie or a picture of you on a site or in the field working and post it on social media with the hashtag smart irrigation, hashtag IA irrigation association, hashtag baseline, hashtag hydropoint, to make a big splash in the social media realm for Smart Irrigation Month. All right. So we'll have more information coming out to everybody throughout the month as that progresses. All right, so let's dive into the topic for today in a bit more depth. So I always like to look up definitions of words when I'm buffalo theorying or thinking about different concepts or capabilities, just to get what the true definition of something is. And so I looked up monitor, and I also looked up manage. So I want to share those definitions. And it's interesting when you do this and you start thinking of it in correlation to the topic you're talking about, it perfectly fits. So monitor is defined as an instrument or device used for observing, checking, or keeping a continuous record of a process or quantity. It also can be defined as to observe and check the progress or quality of something over a period of time, keep under systematic review. Okay. And I think that's a interesting lens to view our topic through today, because we do use devices and instruments in irrigation that do provide continuous data or a record of a process or a quantity, right?
Yep. And I think the keywords there, observing, which is like, watching and recording. It's not, nothing in this definition says take some action and do something.
Correct. Yes. Excellent input. So as we look at the definition of manage, in relation to that, manage is defined as to exert control over, to regulate or limit toward a desired end, or also defined as administer and regulate resources under one's control. Okay, so definitely distinct in their meaning, and it's obvious that they're not interchangeable, especially when we're referring to monitoring or managing a site and the amount of irrigation water that we're applying.
Yeah. And there, Chris, I think, again, I always sort of try to find the meaning is toward a desired end, meaning there's some goal in mind. You're controlling something for a purpose, for a reason, towards a desired end. And there could be many, dozens, perhaps, possible desired ends, desired outcomes, desired goals. And so I think that is probably the most important consideration or question to ask either your client or in the design aspect. What is the goal of this site, of this irrigation system? What are we doing? Yep.
Absolutely true. So as we take these definitions into the technology itself, right, and look at monitor versus management devices, we've got devices that are data collectors, right? We've got moisture or flow sensors, both in plastic version or in the hydrometer version. Those are flow sensors that are measuring the amount of water that's going through the hydraulic structure, right? Not exclusive to baseline. Many manufacturers are able to interface with a flow sensor to collect data and then to use that data in a certain way. But there's a definite difference between collecting data and then how you're managing and monitoring it through the controller platform.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then just to add on to that, you can manage or monitor other data points. We're kind of really talking about water here today, but because baseline records other data points like pressure, you can manage and monitor other aspects of the system.
That's right. Exactly. All right. So if we look at the two different platforms, I think that we've worked hard, especially over the last couple of years, to really differentiate the 1000 platform from the 3200. And as we look at it in depth, the 3200 is really a water management platform that regulates how water is applied to a site. Whereas the base station 1000 is a water monitoring platform that controls the amount of water applied to a site, right? So there's some feature sets built into the 3200 platform that are far more advanced than what the 1000 is capable of doing, that makes it a true water management platform that will deliver those desired outcomes or that desired end, which you spoke to.
Yep, absolutely. 3200 is water management. 1000 is water monitoring. You can manage a few things with the 1000, but it is better suited for monitoring versus the 3200, which is a full water management platform.
Yep. So as we look at the way that we interface with the data collection devices in the controller platforms, it really comes back to our core patent technology on our 2-wire capabilities and our ability to measure it, to manage it. And it's about using that communication and networking protocol in the system to provide operational control of devices, but also to gather data from those devices so that we can use it as usable information in the controller to manage a site better, right? So it's kind of part of the core of who Baseline is and the technology that we bring to market that makes it powerful, that will enhance the performance capabilities of an irrigation system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a business statement about you can't manage what you can't manage what you can't measure. That
Right.
definitely fits to this, right? So you got to measure it first or monitor it first before you can manage it. So
Absolutely.
It's building blocks.
Yep. So we're using the monitoring devices, the data collection devices, in this case, flow sensors, to manage it correctly and to enhance performance with the controller platform.
Yep.
So
And then
the
again,
two go
manage
hand in
can
hand.
mean lots of different things depending on the desired outcome or the end.
Definitely. All right. So as we look at monitor and we look at it in direct relation to the controller interface with Baseline controllers, in Base Manager, they look very similar between the 3200 and the 1000. But in the flow setup tab of Base Manager, we would create the monitoring parameters or input the monitoring parameters so that we are measuring the amount of flow that's going through and then reacting to flow that's out of those parameters, right? So we've got, in this case, a main line or a water source that has a 490 gallon per minute capacity. And there is a high flow limit of 540, which is input by the user. And the desired response is a shutdown, as well as being alerted to an unscheduled flow limit of 105 gallons. So these are all, in my opinion and my view, monitoring activities where we've got data that's coming from a flow sensor and we're monitoring how much is flowing through the system, and then we are reacting to any flows that are out of parameters in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting to differentiate monitor from management. And if you think back 15 years ago, before there was any quote unquote smart controllers, you may have considered yourself to be a water management professional just because you're programming a controller that is outputting water through a sprinkler system. Could be considered management. And you add this on top and it feels like it could become more management when really this is monitoring. This is monitoring the hydraulics, but not really managing any of it.
Yeah. And there's many control products out on the market that do exactly this, right? They're monitoring or measuring how much flows in their hydraulic structure, and they're monitoring it because they want to know how much, at the time or maybe over a period of time, and then being able to respond to any kind of flow that is outside of those parameters. Okay. All right. So as we look at manage as a enhancement of monitoring, in Base Manager, you have the ability to set up a control point and tell that control point to manage by flow. And for me, this is really the deciding crux of the transition from monitoring to management, because this opens up so many more opportunities to affect how the water is being applied to the landscape while monitoring it. That's going to really enhance the performance.
And if you think about that previous slide, Chris, where we had basic flow information, you could purchase a third-party device that keeps watch on your hydraulics and closes a valve. You could do it without an irrigation controller. True. Right? You can do it without an irrigation controller, but you can't, a third-party device can't manage anything because it's not connected to any of the other data points that are necessary to make true decisions in the field. So the only reasonable device that can manage it would have to be the irrigation control system.
That's right. Yep. And then based on the engineering behind the control system, it creates different ways to automate functions of the system based on the data that's being collected by the flow sensors, right?
So that managed by flow, then that's going to take that design capacity of 190 GPM and parse it out and find up to 190 GPM worth of flow to run.
Yep.
Or it allows the user to then make more decisions with it. So it basically unlocks the opportunity for the user to decide how they want to manage by flow. Because just by checking that box doesn't mean that it will, unless the user decides how to manage by flow. I guess that's my thought on that.
Yep. So that is perfect segue into the different capabilities within the base station controller, where we can use that data to manage that flow, right?
Yep. And keep in mind, this was like a quick list that Chris and I put together that we thought were the big rocks. There are many, many other potential desired outcomes that you could manage too.
Absolutely. So Dan, you brought it up already, taking a design gallons per minute. Mm-hmm. In this case, it was 190 gallons per minute. What does the concurrent zone operation mean in managing that 190 gallons by flow?
Well, two ways to do it, right? So one, you could say in this program, I have drip zones and my drip zones are 10 GPM. I could run multiple 10 GPM zones just as long as I'm up below that 190 GPM limit. So you could run multiple zones at once for concurrent zones, just as long as you don't exceed the electrical capacity of the transformer and you don't exceed the hydraulic capacity of your system.
Right.
So that's one version.
Yep.
The other version was, so you're interacting with that one. The other way is turn it all over to manage by flow and let the controller pick and choose those flows. And I like to think it's like puzzle piecing or kind of playing old school Tetris, puzzle piecing these flows together up to the 190 GPM. So it might pick you 100 GPM and a 45 and a 45, but up to whatever the electrical capacity that you set. So I think you can do it either way. Kind of depends on what you know about your system and where you are on understanding hydraulics and electrical.
Yep. And any other site needs, if there's any restrictions that come into play that you also want to, manage around, meaning the soccer coach wants that field water and he just wants to push a button. You might say, well, okay, cool. When that happens, that guy has control of the system. So we may be, you may have certain restrictions or parameters that you want to set up your concurrency to be built around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that coach wanting to run a wet down cycle for that field may impact the performance of the system if there's other irrigation that happens to be running at the time, right? So you don't want to compromise your performance or your distribution uniformity or your water use on other parts of the property just because there's an on-demand need for water for a short period of time to help facilitate some other need on the site. So being able to have that concurrency and being able to measure the capacity of the system so that we can have multiple functions happening on a site at once is a powerful capability. All right, what does water budget mean?
Yeah, I think this is sort of like the sleeping giant. This is this is what we'll be talking about more of in the future. And I say that because we've had this capability for so long, but we haven't done a good job of telling people about it. And sometimes water hasn't been very expensive in certain areas. So there hasn't been as much of a need for it as I think we'll have going forward. But I think that managing a system to meet a water budget, either gallons or more importantly, financially, dollars, is something that should be taken into consideration. And a good example could be a property manager, says, "Hey, Chris, I set my budget this year for water. In July, I only want to spend $6,500. That's what I put in the budget. I can't go over that amount." You could go backwards and come up with the gallons and enter it in the controller. Yeah. And I don't know why we're not doing that more often. We really should be.
Yeah, we did a Tech Talk Tuesday a couple of weeks ago on drought management using water budgeting and water rationing in order to conform to local restrictions that may be imposed, right? And that whole slope calculation to determine how much water your site actually would require based on the plant water requirement, right? And then using those numbers and then doing some simple math to come up with the desired reduction of water use, say it's 20% or 30%, then you can program that into the controller and allow the controller to manage the allocation of that water to the site based on the data that's collected from the monitoring devices as the flow sensor.
Yeah, I think that is, if we're defining water management, that should really be the center of the definition. Managing water to a budget, either hydraulically or financially, really should be the goal of water management.
Which comes back to, exerting control toward a desired end, right? Just as it's defined out of the dictionary. Absolutely.
Yep. Everything else is monitoring plus a little control. Monitoring plus control, but it's not management. Most of everything else that's out there is monitoring with some control, but it's not managing.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So managing water source priorities in empty conditions. If we've got secondary water sources, right. we can use the flow sensors to monitor how much water is in that system, but how do you manage it effectively? Dan, you have some thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, I'd love the idea of you could combine a water budget with the water source priority, or you could do an empty condition. So right there, you've got an empty condition. So that would imply a canal or a cistern, for example. And I know there's parts of the country that get, ditch water. Mm-hmm. That's really cheap. Let's use that because it's going to be cheap and all I got to do is pump it out. But when it drops below a certain level, it's going to be air quote empty. Yep. Well, we don't want to suck air, and I want to have just immediately switch over to my next source. So my highest priority would be the ditch water. And then my lower priority would be the domestic water, which I got to pay real money for. But you could even roll in a budget and say, yeah, we're using domestic water, but when we hit this rate, this water rate to Andy's financial cost based off of a budget, when I hit this tier, you better alert me. Or we need to switch to another water source, or maybe we need to shut it off.
Absolutely.
All those decisions that the water manager can make, and we're giving them those options to make those decisions. Nobody's locked into it.
Yeah. Further helps to define between monitoring and management,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So we need the data from the devices that are connected to it, but that data alone does not facilitate the proper management of that data to facilitate the operation. So very cool. How about program priorities or water window restrictions, Andy?
Yeah, I think program priorities, feeds into water rationing, water budgets, because you can, prioritize your program. So the front of the building, if you're, that you're getting towards the end of your budget, or you have areas of high priority, like that frontage, the focal points, you want to make them a higher priority than the areas in the back, so that if you're running into a restriction, those programs take priority. And it also kind of feeds back to what I said about the coach. If the coach walks up and potentially pushes a button, which we have that capability for, that particular program, if programmed with a higher priority, takes over, waters the soccer field. The other programs go pause, and when it's up, it resumes. But it's that program priority capability that gives you that management opportunity.
Yeah. Yep. And it's also important for drought management as well. So in the Salt Lake area, as we've mentioned before, Utah is in an exceptional drought scenario right now. There's all kinds of restrictions that are being imposed, and cities are prioritizing in the public parks sports fields and making sure that they are watered and irrigated and remain playable. But the rest of the park space, they're letting go, dormant or stressed because there's, water restrictions in place that they're told to conserve and to reduce the amount of water applied to sites. So again, you need the data from the monitoring devices, the instruments in the field, but managing it correctly so that you can, water those priorities is an important capability for sure.
Yeah, and as I look at this list, Chris, I think that at least 4 of these capabilities are exclusive to the 3200 platform, which goes back to why we consider that a water management platform, and the 1000 more of a monitoring platform.
That's right. Yep. So which of the two are part of the 1000?
The water windows.
Yep.
And I couldn't recall. I was struggling to think. You'll have to correct me. The program priorities. I couldn't remember if that's a 1000 or not.
And my vote is concurrent zone operations. You can change some concurrency in the. Oh
yeah, sorry, I did skip that one. You're right.
Yeah.
So were we both wrong or both right?
Program priorities is 3200 exclusive.
Okay, so it was still 4. I just mixed them up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Always good. A quiz show with Chris.
Awesome. I always like to test you guys to see if you know how our product works. So awesome. All right. Well, we are quickly reaching the bottom of our hour. So hopefully we stimulated some critical thinking about monitoring versus management today, and how you can use baseline technology to do both, but how you could use one platform over the other to really manage how you're applying water to the site for those desired outcomes, and to manage the resource correctly.
Yep. And these are great questions and discussion points to have with your clients that they wouldn't otherwise necessarily think to ask you. You may have to ask them, have you thought about it? Do you have a water budget? They may say, no, I've never thought of a water budget. Okay. That might be something worth considering.
Yep. So Dan, if someone that's listening today wants to learn more about how these different features work and are programmed in the controller, where can they go for that info?
Baseline web training, all one word, on YouTube. I've got videos on, I think, all of those right up there. I think I've got every single one of those up in a video.
That's right.
And some have multiple videos.
So great knowledge base for our users to access, to understand how to program and utilize these different capabilities. So we encourage you to go to the web, go to YouTube, look up Baseline Web Training, all one word, and learn more about it. And you can watch those videos as many times as you want, over and over again, until you understand it and it makes sense to you and you know how to effectively use it. So, all right, we are bottom of the hour already.
Right on.
Wow.
So we appreciate everybody's participation today. Thanks for joining us. I know everybody is busy in the field. Again, for those up in the Northwest, please stay hydrated and beat the heat for the next couple of days. And everybody else that is working hard around the country, stay safe and let us know if you need more information.
Hey, next week.
Next week.
Oh, we're off.
We're taking a break next week, right?
Holiday weekend.
It's 4th of July weekend. Holiday is on Monday. So we're going to take a break on next Tuesday, but we will be back the following Tuesday with a discussion about support, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
All right. Good opportunity for everybody to dial in and ask support questions. We're going to teach you how to navigate the baseline support system so that, what's the title of this session, Dan?
How to get a hold of baseline support and not kill yourself.
Perfect. Something like that. So
struggle makes you stronger.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Have a great week, and we will talk to you in a couple. Signing out.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.